Hi, my name is Siti Khadijah binti Anwar. I will explaining introduction of hazard in chemical industry and also safety hazard. So, what is the meaning of hazard? Hazard is a chemical substance, intrinsic characteristic that make it capable of harming a person or the environment. And next is exposure, the degree and frequency with which a chemical substance interact with a person, a group of individual, or the environment. And the last one is risk, the risk of damage resulting from a given chemical substance exposure under specific condition. Next, there is 6 types of hazard in chemical industry. So the first one is chemical hazard, and the second one is physical hazard. Third one is ergonomic. The fourth biological. The fifth is psychological, and the last one is safety hazard. Moreover, chemical hazard can be defined as the negative effect of chemical on human health and physical well-being. Hazardous substance can cause serious harm to the body and cause death. For example, the type of chemical hazard is corrosion, sensitization, carcinogenicity, skin rashes, burn on body parts, and the last one is irritation on eyes.
Risk analysis. Chemical production plants are full of hazards that could endanger the workers' safety. The employees are exposed to toxic chemicals on a daily basis, which can result in serious injuries or death. Chemical risk assessment aims to provide a comprehensive understanding of the nature, extent, and likelihood of a chemical's possible harmful health or environmental effects. It considers both the risk and the exposure. Workplace safety requires finding ways to lower the risk of accidents and implementing fall prevention strategies. There are different sorts of hazards that we need to understand thoroughly. The first stage in risk assessment is hazard identification. But in order to do so, we must first understand and recognize workplace risks. In a workplace, there are primarily 6 categories of danger. Knowing the different sorts of hazards is critical, since identifying them is the first step in preventing them. The first categories of dangers in chemical industry is, of course, chemical hazard. The first hazard is chemical hazard. Chemical hazards are toxic, corrosive, irritant, carcinogenic, flammable, and mutagenic. The work of handling chemicals is directly related to the industry's chemical hazard. Chemical hazards are defined as the negative effects of chemicals on human health and physical well-being. Hazardous chemicals can cause serious harm to the body, such as irritation in eyes, burn on body parts, skin rashes, flammability, corrosion, and possibly cause death. Before handling a chemical, people must have a thorough understanding of it. As a result, having a person trained in the task with SOP prior to putting the employee or contract person on the shop floor is recommended.
Biological hazards includes the harm caused by a virus, bacteria, fungus, parasites, and other diseases in the workplace or chemical plant due to the exposure of animals, people, and infected plant material. Therefore, these viruses and bacteria penetrate the body through infections, allergy, poisoning, and causes disease inflicting harm to the human body. When it comes to biological threats, sanitization and hygiene are the things that can help lessen the risk. It can also be identified as any threat posed by the biosphere, including humans, plants, and animals. Examples are harmful plant, animal, bird droppings, stinging insect, sewage, blood and body fluids, mold and fungi, and airborne pathogens such as common cold. Moreover, when biological threats have been determined, it is essential to develop a risk mitigation strategy. Thank you.
Physical hazard. It refers to environmental elements that can endanger those who work in the factory. Noise, temperature radiation, spillage of chemicals on the floor, and also pressure on the shop floor are all examples of environmental conditions that can injure the human body and are classified as physical hazards.
Safety hazard is the condition when the material is placed in a place where it could create unsafe and harm condition. In the chemical industry, they are full of threats that may be dangerous to the employees if they do not take care of their safety and not taken care of properly. For example, when the employee are wearing damaged protective equipment, it may increase the chemical exposure, which in result will affect them.
Ergonomic hazards are physical circumstances that may put the musculoskeletal system, such as the lower back, muscles or ligaments, the tendons or nerves of hands or wrist, or the bones around the knees, at the danger of damage, resulting in a musculoskeletal ailment. Exposure to ergonomic hazards includes repetition, awkward posture, violent movements, stationary positions, direct pressure, vibrations, severe temperatures, noise, and work. All employees, as well as all companies and organizations, are at risk from ergonomic hazards. According to Peggy Ross, poor workplace design, repeated jobs, uncomfortable body mechanics or postures, and other hazards cause or contribute to a staggering number of debilitating cumulative trauma, disease, and injuries.
Next, psychological hazard. It has impact on workers' mental health and well-being. The critical factors are role ambiguity, physical work factors, role conflict, and also working environment that have been inducers of job stress in chemical process industries in Kerala. This is a study made by Menet.
Risk exposure. Risk exposure refers to the amount of money that could be lost in the future as a result of a given activity or event. Chemical compounds are present in a variety of workplace settings, including research and healthcare laboratories, which have not been fully researched. Inhalation is the most common way to get exposed to toxins in the workplace. Inhaling gases, vapors, mist, dust, fumes, and also smoke are all possible. Those who engage in physically demanding jobs may inhale higher levels of pollutants if they work in a region with contaminated air. If the air in the workplace is contaminated, increased air exchange will result in higher levels of chemical inhalation. Exposure assessment is the process of determining the extent to which a person has been exposed. If there is no exposure to a harmful chemical compound, there is no risk. Risk management measures, that is, wearing goggles and gloves, can be taken by some people who may be exposed to sulfuric acids. Risk exposure in chemical hazards. Chemical burns to the skin are a typical industrial accident. Chemical contact to the skin frequently causes local irritation in the exposed area. The chemical will be absorbed via the skin in some cases, resulting in poisoning. Chemical exposure to the human body can also result in burns, poisoning, and death. Ache, anthrax, and ulcers in hand, nose, and other parts of the body may also occur. Many chemicals can produce serious burns if they come into touch with living tissue, causing cancer and irritation of the windpipe. Next is risk exposure to biological hazards. Biological hazards are agents with the potential to endanger humans. Biological hazard exposure also includes needles, animal bites, aerosol exposure such as broken tubes in centrifuges and mixing producers, and other situations that could result in disease from a biological agent are all potential exposures. Next, from physical hazard, noise, temperature, radiation, spillage of chemicals on the floor, and pressure on the shop floor are all examples of environmental conditions that can injure the human body and are classified as physical hazards. Slips, trips, falls, electricity, noise, vibration, radiation, heat, cold, and also fire are all physical risks. Excessive energy exposure might result in harm and suffering. If we are exposed every day, we may develop an illness and potentially become disabled. Next, exposure to ergonomic hazards. Ergonomic hazards include repetition, awkward posture, violent movements, stationary position, severe temperature, noise, and also work. Ergonomic dangers affect all workers and also their families as well as all industries and organizations. A shocking number of disabling cumulative trauma illnesses and injuries are caused or contributed to by poor workplace design, repetitive tasks, awkward body mechanics or postures, and other risks. Next is psychological hazards exposure. Psychological hazards in the workplace are related to the psychological and social aspects of the workplace, not only the physical ones. Workers are likely to be exposed to a variety of psychological hazards and risk factors as a result of their jobs. Stress, exhaustion, bullying, violence, hostility, harassment, and burnout are just a few of the issues that can harm workers' health and wellness. Psychological hazards can have a negative influence on workers' psychological and physical health and well-being if they are not properly controlled. Work-related stress, work-related bullying, work-related violence, and also work-related weariness are all psychological hazards that can have a significant impact on a worker's health and safety.
According to Markowski and Manan, risk matrix can be defined as a technique to describe and evaluate process hazards that are generally found by one or more multifunctional reviews. The type of risk matrix used is the quantitative risk matrix. The blocks of a strictly qualitative risk matrix will be specified in descriptive or qualitative terms. The blocks of a strictly quantitative risk matrix are specified in quantifiable or quantitative terms. As you can see from the risk matrix, it is shown that 5 hazards are categorized in the moderate sector, while only 1 hazard is categorized in the major sector. Based on the risk metric, it is stated that psychological hazard is considered to have the lowest severity and lowest frequency. This indicates that the least dangerous hazard in the chemical business is psychological hazard. In addition, both the severity and frequency scales reveal that physical hazard and safety hazard have the same outcome of 3. Last but not least, as shown on the matrix scale, with a result of 4 on the frequency scale and a result of 5 on the severity scale, chemical hazard appears to be the most common and most serious danger in chemical industry.
In a nutshell, there are 6 categories of hazards in the chemical industry: chemical hazards, biological hazards, physical hazards, ergonomic, psychological, and safety hazards, all of which are harmful to one's body and mental health and can result in death. Next, hazardous chemicals can affect the body in a variety of ways, including eye irritation, burns to bodily parts, skin rashes, flammability, corrosion, and even death. As a result, it is critical to determine the risk that is relevant to the work environment. Analyzing the danger is critical in order to prevent it from occurring again. Thank you, that is all from me.